Hi, welcome to my loose watercolor lavender fields tutorial. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll likely have heard of the Paint Your Style challenge that I am a part of alongside 8 other co-hosts. This challenge started out as a way for us to practice watercolor together while maintaining our own artistic voices, and it has grown into this wonderful community filled with lovely artists that paint along every week. My co-hosts and I are planning how to celebrate this anniversary as a group, and individually, I thought it would be fun for myself to repaint some of our past reference images, and for today's tutorial, we will be painting this lavender field sunset photo. This is how I painted it a year ago, and this is how I painted it last week. Here are the watercolor supplies. Feel free to pause the video and write them down. The main thing that I want to point out is the colors that I use for this tutorial are primarily Naples yellow, which is a light warm yellow, permanent rose, which is a bright pink, Indanthrone blue, which is a deep almost indigo blue, and Bela Lugosi, which is a brown sepia-like color. And then Vintage Violet, which is a deep purple color, and I use some metallic paints to get the glow or highlight from the sunset. The first thing I'm going to do after I have taped my paper down with some masking tape is to use a ruler and roughly sketch out the lines of the lavender field. When it comes to lavender fields, it's important to get the rows sort of in perspective, because I think it just affects how the overall landscape will work out. So in the reference photo, the vanishing point for all the fields is on the very right, so I'm making all my lines start from that point. And then I'm just going to take an eraser and sort of lighten those pencil marks so that it's not too dark once I start painting. Now I'm going to take a flat 2-inch brush and I'm just going to wet my paper, and we are going to start laying down our first wash. So this is my Polina Bright round 2 brush. You can use any round brush you have. I am picking up some Naples yellow and I'm dropping it in sort of parts of the sky, and then now I'm going to pick up some permanent rose and sort of lightly mix those together, and we want to keep the sky sort of on the paler, brighter side. From the reference photo, it just looks really soft and bright. I also picked Naples yellow over like a cadmium or even like a yellow ochre, because I think Naples yellow and permanent rose or opera rose, those two colors just really mix well together, and they create just a really soft, dreamy like sky. So after I have the sky kind of painted out, I'm going to take some more permanent rose and I'm just going to fill in the bottom of our field, because when we start painting the lavender fields, I want the background sort of like peeking beneath it on the sides to be pink rather than white. Also, just on a random side note, I do want to share that I took a watercolor lavender field tutorial by Alina Z. Her Instagram handle is Inkpaper Squirrel on Instagram, but she has a Skillshare class on a lavender field, and it's so good. So if you're looking for more tutorials on lavender fields, I strongly recommend her class. It was, I think, one of the best classes I've taken on painting this subject. Now to start painting the rest of the landscape, I am going to mix some of the permanent rose with the Indanthrone blue to get this kind of warm purple. And I'm also going to grab some Vintage Violet, which is a handmade paint. It's a deep purple, and I just want an array of shades between the pink, the blue, and the purple, and we're primarily going to use these three colors, and I hope that by not using too many colors it sort of feels harmonious. So I'm gonna first start off by drawing the mountains sort of in the background. This is Vintage Violet, and I'm going to paint it in. And as the paint is still wet, I am going to grab my metallic paints, and I'm going to be dropping some metallic paints where I feel the sun setting, where it's hitting the mountains or the fields, to sort of give it like a very nice glow. This is just some gold metallic paint. You can use any type of shimmer or metallic paint that you want. And then now I'm going to grab a light wash of the blue, and we are going to paint the mountain sort of like directly in front of probably the brightest part of the sun. There are 3 mountains, and so this is kind of the furthest one. And I'm going to grab some of that metallic paint again and drop just a little bit at the peak of this furthest mountain. Now I'm going to grab a darker shade of the blue, and we are going to paint the mountain on the very right, which seems like it's the closest one to us. So I'm going to make this mountain the darkest. I am dropping in some metallic paint. And then I'm just going to add a little bit more of the blue to make it just a little darker. Now I'm going to start painting the lavender fields, and sorry, I forgot to mention this earlier, but starting from painting the mountains, this is a round 0 brush, so it's a little bit smaller than the brush that we used to lay down the first wash, but I'm sort of just making like kind of like loose circular motions to sort of paint the lavender field, and I want the further away we are, the further the field is away from us, the lighter it's going to be, and then the closer it is to us, the darker it's going to be. And in between the lavender rows, I'm going to drop in some brown, and I sort of just really want all these colors to like bleed into each other. And so furthest away, I have just a really light wash of the permanent rose. And then as we get closer to us, I'm going to add more permanent rose. And now I'm going to grab some Indanthrone blue and mix it in with the permanent rose so that it kind of gives me like this purple color. And I like that it touches sort of with the brown that we dropped in between the last row. So I'm going to add more of the brown in between each row. And then again, at the field furthest from us, the shade of pink is going to be very light. And then for this row, I'm going to add actually more of the blue. And as I drop the brown, I kind of like that it touches the purple and bleeds a little bit. And then these last two rows on the very right side, I feel are pretty dark. So I'm going to add more of the blue and maybe some of the vintage violet too. And then now I'm going to grab my metallic paints again. And while everything is still somewhat wet, I'm going to drop some of the metallic silver in between the rows of lavender to give it sort of like a really nice bright highlight. I'm going to add just a little bit more vintage violet to this row right here. And then after we've dried this layer, I'm going to do some paint splatters. I got some paper to cover the sky, and I want to splatter some permanent rose in the upper lavender fields, and then for the lower ones, I'm going to grab more of a dark purple. And then I just want to finish it off with a light flock of birds. And then once everything is dry, we can remove the masking tape from our piece. And this is our final landscape. I hope you enjoyed painting this with me. If you liked this tutorial, please hit the like button. It's a really small way to help my channel grow. And if you enjoy my content, use the following QR codes to either find me on Patreon or Instagram.